Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you joined us today. This is going to be an interesting discussion. We're going to be talking about a book called Soul Making, The Realization of the Mystical Life. And the author is Douglas Gillette. This book I found to be incredibly enlightening and kind of bringing parts of our spiritual journey more into the light so that we can kind of look at them, walk around them, and apply them as is appropriate. It's a profound guide to embracing our divine nature. It explains how to embrace the paradox of the spiritual path, that we're already reflections of the divine and manifest our soul's transcendent nature in everyday life. It provides contemplative and philosophical tools to support the journey to experience the sacred and explores mythic stories of soul development and intuition found in Maya and Pythagorean traditions, ancient Egyptian thought, and Zoroastrianism, to throw in a few. Douglas has a master's degree of religious studies from the University of Chicago, a Master of Divinity degree from Chicago Theological Seminary. He taught in the Emeritus program at Oakton College for nearly 2 decades, as well as served as a pastor, pastoral counselor, and a Jungian influenced life guide. And he's the best-selling author of several books, including King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, that he co-authored with Robert Moore. Welcome to the show, Douglas.
Thanks, Barbara. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
It's always a pleasure for me to be able to read a book and then get the author, in my camera, so to speak. I look upon Nightlight as my PhD program. I find experts in the field, I read their book, and then I get them to tutor me for an hour or so, free of cost.
Yeah.
which is incredible. I am just so delighted that we're able to get together and talk here. I think the first thing I really want to go into with you is we're talking soul making. That's not inferring we don't have one to start with. It's sort of what do we do with it? So
first of all, I should say the title was not my choice; it was the publisher's. But I think it's a good title, and what I would mean by soul making is I think all of reality is layered. So at some ultimate level or layer, we are already made, finished, perfected. And at the same time, on this level of reality, at least, and maybe others, we are becoming to be what we eternally are. It's a weird thing, of course, but I think of Plato's saying that time is the moving image of eternity. And that goes back to ancient Egyptian thought, actually. Um, and so, yes, we're making, at least it feels like that. And I think, that's good enough. It's real.
Yeah.
We're making our souls, and yet at another level, they're already made. I don't know what the journey's for. I mean, really, except it must have something to do with wanting to go through time and space as we know it, uh, as if we were not fully made.
Well, if we look at the soul, the spirit, it's etheric. It doesn't have any physicality.
Yeah.
So, in order to experience the depth and the breadth of physical emotions, we have
Yeah.
to be in a physical form.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that is part, maybe. I mean, in an overall sense, it is the reason that we're here and that we're us as we are here. Um, I I do not think that any level of reality, be it etheric or what we call physical, which actually we call it that, but as, as quantum physics has shown, uh, nobody knows what it is really. And the further down you get, almost immediately, you discover it's not physical or material in the usual senses of the terms, right? So, but it's all real and it's all, and I'm a theist, so I'm going to use the word God or the divine, what he, she, it wants uh, for himself, herself, itself, us. Um, and okay, I mean, I'm not in the driver's seat. It feels like I'm in some kind of cooperative relationship with that. Uh, my ultimate self, the ultimate self of all of us, uh, and as if is good enough. I mean, I don't know what reality is, capital R, and I don't know anybody who does. And I've read a lot of thinkers, and as well as people that are not, necessarily classified as philosophers or theologians, and it's like, well, yeah, quantum physicists who can't even agree that there are such things as particles. It's like, okay, guys, well, um, it's okay because it's whatever it is, and I don't know what that is, but somebody does.
Or something. I mean, if there is total awareness,
Mhm.
I know people who have near-death experiences speak of being able to see 360 degrees at the same
Mhm.
time. Now
Mhm.
that's a cool trick.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
Yeah.
so that there, we know from what is reported from people that have had near-death experiences or even astral traveling that there are,
Mhm.
I don't know, tools and gifts that as a physical entity we're not utilizing. But I'm
Right.
wondering, is it possible to get to a place where we can utilize it?
I don't know. Um, to some extent, I think. But there's a reason for our being here and being us. And I don't think it is simply to get out of here. You know what I mean? I mean, it's certainly an ambiguous reality, as I think many levels of reality are. Light and shadow, creation, destruction, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's all intended. Um, to your point about can we learn? Uh, people have often asked me, I don't know if we can or not. It looks to me like some people can.
Yeah.
But people have often asked me, um, do I have a meditative practice to get into the altered states of consciousness or whatever different levels of reality? And I don't. I mean, they just have always, um, I don't have a conscious meditative practice. I've lived my life open, though.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so stuff has just appeared or just come to me. And So, yeah, I'm not disciplined about it, but I have experienced very much um, a transient thought or wish um, that just is gone in a few moments or whatever, and then it shows up
Mm-hmm.
uh, as a physical manifestation or spirit or etheric manifestation. But I just I just live my life open and stuff comes shows up.
Well, I think everyone has their own way of clicking in.
Hmm.
Some people do the chanting, some people do, um, some people do all sorts of prayers, everybody has their own pathway, their own method. Um, I have found it very easy to click in
Hmm.
and to shift to another level of consciousness where, as far as writing goes, it flows it flows.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't think.
Yeah,
And I used to, when my mother was still alive, I would say to her, "Hey, come look at this," and she would, and I would be typing along. Now I don't really type, um, but my fingers would be typing, and I would be talking to my mother, and beautiful stuff was coming out on there.
yeah,
And my
yeah.
mother said, "How are you doing that?" And I said, "Beats the heck out of me, but
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to sit here till it's all done."
yeah. There. I have experienced a lot of triggers. Um, I mean, you mentioned a few things, music, even using the intellect, my intellect, to try to figure things out, you know, or just uh, having a visual. I mean, there's so many triggers if you're open. I think you're much more open than I am, Barbara. I mean, from our previous conversations, but and I will say that I'm an artist too, sculptor, painter, other things, and of course an author, writer, as you are, and that's why we're here today. But uh, I was offered when I was young the chance to more than that. I was urged to pursue art more deeply, and I said no, no thanks. Uh, and here's the reason why. I knew enough about the great artists, painters mostly, but sculptors too, to know that some significant number of them live very unhappy lives.
Yeah.
And, or perhaps, excuse me, too open to uprushes from, I would say, the collective unconscious or whatever those realms are. You can call them by many names, but um, and consequently, they didn't have lives here.
Well, you know, and I'm only giving you my philosophy and my expertise from where I come from.
Yeah.
I have found that so long as a person has creativity in their life, they are fueling the
Hmm.
spiritual journey.
Yeah, I agree.
And when people call me and say, nothing's happening, I can't get nothing's happening. And my first question is, what are you doing creatively? not for compensation, but what are
Right.
you doing creatively? Because
Right.
Lord knows you don't make money on books.
Right. Yeah.
So that if you have creativity in your life, there is a joy and a lightness
Yeah.
that opens a portal
Yeah.
to reach to the divine.
Yeah. I
And
agree. Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't it
One of
doesn't
the
have to be pretty, it has to be fun.
right. Right. It has. Yeah. Right. It has to be. And there's a feeling of co-creating.
Yes.
Yeah, of co-creating, and creating or creativity for me is one of the most powerful expressed aspects of the divine.
Well, that's when I was reading your book, you know, acting and
Mhm,
sculpture and
mhm.
gardening in your backyard, creating a magical place for children and forget
Yeah,
children, for adults.
yeah,
Um, and finding, to me, creativity is what opens you to the magic of spirit. Period.
yeah, yeah. I would add, as I'd like to know what you think of this, because the most exalted feelings I've had, um, which for me are somewhat even significantly different from kind of psi experiences, which I
Mhm.
view as sort of on a horizontal line. It's realms, I mean, vertical too, but darker
Yeah.
generally than that exalted, lifting up, expansive stuff. That oh, I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, it was something about, oh, is love the most
Yes.
expansive love for all that is, love for God, love for what, and this is hard for a lot of people. It's hard for me at times too, but love for another person.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Not hard in my marriage or with our daughter, or certainly not with our granddaughter, but that feeling, which is somehow related to creativity, I think, because what I'm creating, I am kind of feeling that love. And then when I connect with another person in love, I mean, there isn't anything more that I want or desire or feel incomplete about. That's it.
I think that what people um, need to understand is that when you are taking part in creation, you are you are not really creating, you are becoming a channel for
Yeah,
creation,
right.
and therefore it energizes you. And if you ever want to know whether or not you have channeled something or been in that space, when all is said and done, if you are energized, if you just can't
Mhm.
sit still, if you somebody has to peel you off the ceiling with a greasy hamburger, then
Yeah.
you've been there. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yep. I don't know if all human beings, most human beings, some human beings, very few human beings get either have the temperament or the opportunity in life to feel much of that. Uh, it's a shame to me that so much, I mean, it's awful. It's a horror show, actually, for me, that so many human beings throughout history and now, contemporarily, all over the planet, live such difficult, even horrific lives. I don't know what's up with that either. I used to struggle with that and try to figure it out, and I can't. Um, it seems like some people just are, um, many people are just crushed. And some of us, however, as tough as things get, um, somehow are given. It's a gift. Uh, Lifting, light, um, magic.
Well, I often tell people that we create our realities by our perspective of it.
Yeah.
And to me, when things tumble down and there's a mess all around and I'm challenged like crazy, I, I don't go into the depression. It's like, this is so cool. I have learned enough so that I am being challenged with something that is more than I
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah.
And this is so cool because now I have to figure out creative ways to get through it and get
Mhm.
beyond it. And I get very excited about it. Now, I don't create messes on purpose.
Yeah.
They just come. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's sort of like, okay, so I've grown. This is telling me my
Mhm.
spiritual journey is about to take a step up,
Yeah.
not down. I will
Yeah.
not. It wouldn't be there if I couldn't surmount it.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly have felt that way too, mostly. Um, I become really sensitized to the um, to the combination of resilience and vulnerability of the very young. Because our granddaughter, only granddaughter, is 2 years and 9 months old. I was her daytime nanny or caregiver for 10 months, from when she was 3 months to 13 months. And uh, and while she's had some rough times and so forth, and her parents are going through a nasty divorce right now, and she is affected by it. She is traumatized to some degree.
Sure.
Nonetheless, she has my wife's and our daughter's love and care. They live with us now,
Hmm.
uh, and but I'm telling you, Barbara, the I we as adults, or to the extent that we're acting as if we're adults,
Hmm.
um, we have a chance most of the time, you know. And an infant certainly doesn't, at least in its baby state. Um, Although I will say this too, I've noticed I have a shelf full of developmental psychology books, and I threaten every now and then to take them out in the backyard and burn them
Good idea.
because yeah, because it really is clear to me now in the nature nurture controversy
Hmm.
that while nurture can have a powerful influence, the most powerful is the temperament you're born with, is nature.
Well, the magical thing, in my opinion, and experience, that the soul, the spirit that we carry within us, there is such a thing as spiritual DNA.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when the embryo is created, it's just an embryo. But when the spirit enters that embryo is when the breath of life happens, when the
Hmm.
heart starts beating. And that spirit that enters that child, that embryo, is a fully developed,
Yeah,
wise, extraordinarily powerful spirit.
yeah.
And as the child grows, teachers and parents and everybody pile stuff on top of that spiritual energy so the spirit can't manifest as well.
Hmm.
When my son was born, I talked to him as an adult.
Hmm.
It was like, nope, you can't do this. And
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because with our granddaughter, um, she was, first of all, her parents, our daughter and her almost ex-husband, reported to us that when she had a lot of problems, health problems, when she was born. She was all tubed up and so forth. and they eventually, within 48 hours, had to get her to a neonatal ICU. But that first day after the birth, the parents are on this side of the viewing window. The nurses held the baby up, and they both experienced. They got goose flesh because she was looking right into their eyes, and they both felt that she was saying, "I've got this. I'm stronger than both of you."
Yeah.
And I know when she was about 3.5 months old when I had been caring for her. In my first Zoom class, I was going to show, not the first one, but the first one that she was present. I held her up to the screen for my class to see, and they said, "Okay, that's a baby, but there's a person in there."
Well, yeah, a lot of times when babies are crying, it's out of frustration because they can't make the muscles work appropriately to tell you how crazy you are.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I in the book,
yeah,
I do talk about. I think I remember my birth night, and I remember the sensations of you lying on your back. You can't move. You're paralyzed basically, and it's cold compared with what you have been used to. And
yeah,
I'm picturing where I was before I came here, just in the moments just before I came here. And and then of course I wasn't thinking in English because
yeah,
but animals think and plan and strategize and so forth without words. A lot of us do too, actually. But I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to forget all that where I came from, and I'm going to be a baby. And right after that thought, yep, it was gone.
yeah.
Uh, and I was a baby. Um, and then gradually, I started remembering.
You know,
Um,
I'm wondering if the spirit inside the soul coming in is, oh crap, I have to start from scratch again. And
yeah.
so but it has to work through the process of being human, which is a learning process.
Yes.
And it's, to me, it's sort of like when you get to be as old as you or I are, theoretically we should be able to communicate and attach or connect to that part of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope is that at that point the memory of the other side is more and more real to us. um to me,
Yeah. It.
the other side to me is a staging ground. And
Mhm.
it's beautiful, and it's bucolic. It's just, it's the colors are brighter, nature is amazing. I mean, it's a beautiful, wonderful staging ground. But in my experience, I've come to feel that our spirit, we incarnate millions and millions and millions and millions of times, expanding and growing and gathering. And I have never believed that we were going to go home
Mhm. Mhm.
to our source. What's the point? Our source already knows it all.
Mhm.
So to me, individual spirits have this journey over millions, maybe billions, maybe trillions of lifetimes. At some point, they have gathered so much, they break through to an empty dimension where they become the source of creation of
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
dimension.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. Um. I. Huh.
you don't have to believe that, by the
No.
way.
No. I'm going to tell you a dream
Okay.
that I had a couple of weeks ago. Um. I haven't told anybody about it except my wife. I have these dreams, and of what I think are pictures of what I call the antechambers,
Yeah.
both directions, coming down, going up, or whatever. And some of those are not pleasant. Some of those dreams are not pleasant. And the recurring dream of being lost in a city, which is sort of familiar and sort of not. That's not the only dream I have in the antechamber, but
Yeah.
kind of dream. But it is nightmarish in the sense that the figures in the dream, in that particular genre or type of dream, are tricksters or stupid or both. And so I never find my car. I never get back to my loved ones, whatever, whatever. Okay, so here's this other dream that I had. And it has to do, part of the trigger was was the agony that our granddaughter's going through at times with this divorce thing. And that my wife and I, especially us, are experiencing with her. But this dream, and I'm getting older and more tired and more achy and less able to do all the physical things and so forth that I want to be able to do with our granddaughter. Okay. But so here's the dream. I'm inside a vast windowless, sort of just barely off white, huge structure. It has only one level, but it's like 2 stories high in effect. So it's high courtyards and like classrooms and all kinds of, and it is just absolutely filled with light. It is radiant, and everyone in it is filled with light. And it has a double arched entryway that leads directly onto basically a narrow sidewalk and then parking areas. And I think I'm there to drop off a masculinish, feminine, um, love loved one, because she has a presentation to make in one of the classrooms, quote unquote. They look like classrooms. So I find my way. I drop her off. I find my way back out through the double arches, and I'm on the sidewalk, and I realize I can't possibly find my car. Here we go again. Uh, and I woke up with this nightmarish feeling. I'm lost again. But whatever else the dream may mean, that I think one thing it might mean is I'm dropping off my soul or spirit, or not completed psyche, but very much higher level than I am. I'm dropping her off in this wondrous place that goes on and on forever and is filled with light. I think I'm dropping her off and I'm going to go back to the world. But I think the person I dropped off is really me, the higher me, whatever. And I, standing on the sidewalk outside, it's still filled with light outside too. I just evaporate. In other words, I think I think maybe the identity that I have here, while infused very much with the identity I dropped off, is not a permanent identity.
No, but
And, and
interesting though, you couldn't find the vehicle
right.
Because
So-
you were the vehicle.
And I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't going anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am the vehicle. Yeah. And whatever external to me vehicle that I use to negotiate this reality is no longer, when you get to that point, to that place of light, it's not needed.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not really a nightmare. It's an awareness.
Yeah. It was liberating. It felt nightmarish at first, but the difficult situations that we continue to go through with our daughter, et cetera, et cetera.
Aren't our
I
dreams?
just immediately, we blanked out.
No, we're back.
Yeah, we blanked out for a second. We were black screened. But
Aren't
anyway,
our,
yeah. But
aren't our dreams, though, a way that the spirit talks to us?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, you maybe were not getting a point, and it was giving you a point, and you didn't like it.
I didn't like the lostness at the end, but then I realized I'm lost out there because that's not my world anymore.
Mhm.
And what I was going to say is that in the as we're going through these difficulties, emotional, uh,
Yeah.
I just, without even willing or wishing, that dream vision of this huge, beautiful, light filled, endless kind of structure, just washes back in, and I'm good.
I'm wondering if everybody has their own perception of what that transitional point is.
Hmm.
And if you have a staunch Catholic background, you'll see angels with wings and halos and harps. And if that's not your background, you will, whatever you perceive.
Right.
I'm hopeful for gardens.
Yeah,
That
me too. Me too. Yeah, yeah. I have one of my lyrical illuminations in my book, At the Thresholds of Elysium, poetry book, is heaven. I think I say in that poem, heaven. I think at first is what we wish it, or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think uh, 2 mornings after my mother died in our home in Miami, taking care of her. Uh, the bedroom was, I was in, still asleep or waking up. The room was filled with light. It was Miami, but anyway,
Yeah.
but there was light in addition to the light. And up sort of in the left hand corner of the room, in my head, not audibly, I heard my mother's voice. And she said, Doug, it's not something she would ever say in this world. She said, Douglas, it's so beautiful over here. Wow, mother, well, you've seen something you didn't think you were going to see,
Yeah, didn't expect.
didn't expect. Yeah. You're somewhere that you didn't expect to be, which is great.
Yeah, I had one friend of mine, who another friend was taking care of, and when she was she was gosh, she was a wild lady, and she
Mm.
was in her 80s and 90s. She was still chasing men,
Oh,
and
wow.
they had to call the police on her in the nursing home at one point.
Ah,
So when she passed away, um, that's one of the gifts I have. That is, when as soon as someone passes away, I can see what they're experiencing.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
And
wow.
she turned around and she looked and she said, I thought I was going to hell, but this is definitely not hell.
That reminds me, sort of, and again, I'm not nearly as open as you are, but for probably 10 years, maybe longer, my classes, my in-person classes, and then the Zoom classes, I had anywhere from 20 to 35 people per class. And one woman, wonderful, beautiful, 50s, late 50s. Uh, Her name was Candy, Candy. She was a staunch atheist. But she wasn't even remotely pushy about it or mean about it, or she just was an atheist, and
Mhm.
she would voice that, and many times, of course. And she she was finally diagnosed. Once we were on Zoom, she was finally diagnosed with terminal abdominal cancer.
Wow.
And but she hung in the Zoom classes to the very last class, very last session of The Decay and Collapse of the Roman Republic, which I was teaching. And and so she was saying her goodbyes to everybody because she wasn't going to make it more than another couple of days. And she said to me, so she was telling us all about how uh, her vision was that she was going to go back to becoming stardust. And
Okay.
I did something I never do. Uh, and that is, I said, Candy, I think you may be surprised. Okay. I don't know what the 2 days or 3 days thing is about, but I, later, after she died, 2 days after she died, I was waking up in that sort of twilight zone where a lot of things happen,
Yeah.
and I heard her voice. And she said, Doug? I said, Yeah, hi, Candy, I'm here. And then she said something more, but I was too awake to hear it at that point. But I thought, well, yeah, that's why the incredulous tone in her voice, because she hadn't expected to be Candy at all after
Yeah.
biological death. And there she was.
It's so cool. I mean,
It is.
it I think the fact that you are leaving one reality and going into another reality is scary, and you don't want to let go, but the reality is you're not letting go.
Right. Yeah. I've had a lot of dreams really, that I think are as I mentioned before, sort of prefigurations or proddings into what will come after for me in the immediate, in the antechamber.
Yeah.
And and as I mentioned, a lot of them are not completely pleasant, but some are okay. And this dream I had a couple weeks ago that I just was talking about, it I wouldn't say it's removed the fear of death exactly, but when I see, feel, experience that dream again, the fear of death is like not present.
Well, the reality is you're in another place and you know you have died and you don't feel dead.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that, of course, I don't want to leave my wife, my daughter, my granddaughter, my friends behind. But I should say, on the other hand, I think time is works at different rates or different speeds, whatever, different modes on other levels. And so it may not be that I'm without, my wife and she's without me there.
I don't
Uh,
think there's time there.
yeah.
So
Well,
there's not going to be a sense of being without for very
mhm,
long because
mhm.
time stops there.
Yeah.
There is no
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's the only place there is time is where humans have made it.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, you go out of the human realm, and you're not waiting, because in a flash,
Yeah.
there they are.
Yeah, I think so. That reminds me, I talk about this too, non-locality, the discovery of non-locality in physics, that just apparently just beneath or above or wherever it is, time space time, where particles are separate entities and it takes time for them to communicate. Experiments have now shown that beneath that level, they're in immediate
Sync.
Yeah, contact. I mean, it's not contact. They are the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, individuals maybe, but there's no time. There's no space, obviously. Um, yeah.
They've done that with plants too. Plants that have been yelled at tend to wilt, and plants that have been loved bloom. And if you separate two plants who have both been loved, and you take them hundreds of miles apart, and you shock one, the other one is shocked as well.
Feels it too. Yeah.
So it's timeless. There is a commonality, an attachment, a frequency.
A frequency that is unity.
Yes.
If not oneness.
But I think we are all the same, because all of us are connected to the divine.
Yeah.
Our creativity is just a reflection of that creativity manifest in reality.
When you know this, I'm sure, when St. Paul, and I forget where it is because I'm not a chapter and verse pastor, never was, but where he says, something, God, in whom we live and move and have our being. That always struck me as, wow, within whom we live and move and have our being. Then I learned, so we're within, we're never outside. We are there, whether we're conscious of it or not. Then I learned that he was quoting a Greek poet, can't remember his name, who, and the Greek word for God was Zeus, not as a name. That is Zeus is the direct Greek translation of our word God.
Okay.
Even though he shows up in mythology and so forth, the real Zeus, it just means God. Okay, so he says, so the poet says, first comes Zeus, or God, Theos, in whom we live and move and have our being. So we're there, we're within that, and of course connected then.
I tell everybody that we have a seed of the infinite within us.
Yeah.
That's we are seeds of the infinite.
Yeah.
And that seed, that potential, has the potential for being the infinite at some point in time. Yeah. Not now, not tomorrow or the next day.
Right.
But if it is allowed to manifest appropriately, it will become as the source. I mean, when people talk about dying and going to a celestial nursing home in the sky, I cringe. Because our spirit has a journey ahead of it. And it's very exciting.
Yeah.
What I love is talking to men and giving them that. And I know I had a relationship once with a man, and he said, I will never come back as a woman. I've seen menopause and I don't want anything.
Well, there is male menopause too, by the way. It's not as drastic usually physically, but anyway, no, I don't want to do gender stuff really, because that gets off into another whole universe. It gets very complicated. But I want to say, in response to what you just said, that in that dream of light, where I think I'm dropping this loved woman off to give her talk, I realized that that is me. Not this me exactly, though this me shows characteristics of that. But,
Yeah.
you know, um, and she is a she, but um, she has a masculine-ish quality too. And so she's not a shy violet, type. She's really all there. And so I'm glad that a part of my masculine identity is with her too. But I'll say it's not by accident that the ancients often talked about the soul as feminine or predominantly feminine. I don't know where all that's going, but
Well, that makes sense because the element of love is the foundation of all of this. And it's
yeah,
easier for a woman to express love than a man.
in most cases, I think that's true. I've known exceptions, but yes, in most cases, I think that's true.
So that and
Excuse me.
some of the Greek and Roman goddesses, I mean, they were warriors.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
they but they had the capacity for love. And I think that's one of the things that's so important for people to understand is that love is the foundation.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Love makes the world go round for
eh,
sure.
for sure.
And
Yeah,
not hot and heavy sexual, but the element of love itself.
right. I think the sexual is, at least for me, and certainly when I was younger, I had great attraction and power.
Yeah.
And it was easy to confuse that with love of the person. But even before, even before I started my testosterone decline or whatever, I met my wife, and I talk about that too in some detail. And while I was physically attracted to her, I the person, the soul slash spirit that she manifested. I mean that. Wow! And I knew right away. This is it. This is it.
Hmm.
And I talk about how yes, she was married and so forth, but it was a very unhappy marriage, and it was obvious over the course of the 9 months that we got to know each other a little bit, um, that she was way did not belong in the category that she was in. You know, uh, not intellectually, not spiritually, not in terms of ambition, not in terms of soul. And what she radiated, I talk about light again. Uh, she radiated light to me, and still does
Well, sure.
30 years later.
Well, that has no age to it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I was interviewing her for a job actually at the time to come in and clean and cook because I took my mother in to live with me uh, in my apartment in Chicago. And uh, I, I'll leave out all the other stuff because it's too much. But uh, one thing, keying off of what you just said about no age, um, she told me I called her on the phone to ask her to come for an interview, and she told me later that that first in that during that first phone call, she heard my voice as if she had heard it long, long ago. Yeah. Um,
Could easily be past life.
yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we do tend to kind of recirculate,
Hmm.
which is kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
Well,
Yeah.
there's so much out there that's so cool, and
Yeah.
and it's exciting, and working on your spiritual development, working on stretching your spirit with creativity and plunging into new dimensions, literally,
Yeah.
is a very exciting thing. Of
Yeah.
course, you can't pay rent and buy food with it, but
Right.
but there is a balance, and you come to that
Mhm.
balance, and it enlightens your whole being,
Yeah.
so that you begin to radiate that, and it makes for wonderful magic and synchronicities and
Yeah, it does.
coincidences within your life. So
Mhm.
it's well worth playing with.
Yep. Yep. You said earlier, Barbara, that something about as we're getting older, or many older people start feeling closer to that. Um, and I certainly have experienced that too. Um, uh, and I think that the dream of light that I made so much of uh, is part of that. I also feel my mother and her parents, who were very important to me, somehow closer than I have for years. Um, and
Well, if you are open to the experience, the chances of it happening are far greater.
yeah, 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 yeah. A lot of my students, actually fellow travelers in our weekly book discussion group, some of them will say, "I've never had these feelings at all," and yet they're in the group and they stay with it. So um, there's something. I will bet you anything they have experienced this stuff, but
Oh,
the repression barrier between their conscious awareness and that is too rigid for them to feel it in their conscious lives. But
yeah, I think words don't really express the feeling. I know at one time I served in the pulpit for about 5 years as a rotating minister, and I decided that I was going to offer the congregation spiritual baptism.
mm,
And, I said, you can come forward and get a spiritual baptism and a rose. I had a rose for everybody. And I said, don't have to, no problem, but
right.
I'll give you a message and I'll give you, the symbol. And it was funny because everybody in the church got up. They all had to be lapsed Catholics because they did pew by pew. It was I gave no directions, but they knew how to come forward. And one man, when he stood in front of me, he said, "I'm an atheist." I said, "I don't care, and neither does the Creator." And
Yeah,
he said, "I don't believe." And I said, "You're standing here."
yeah, yep,
And I
yep.
gave him his message and I gave him his rose. And he came up like a lapsed Catholic. It was really, and afterwards he said to me, "I don't believe in this stuff." I said, "You hang on to that."
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and he looked at me and he said, "You don't believe me, do you?" I said, "I believe you're saying it. I don't
yeah.
believe you believe it."
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. That again reminds me of the thing with candy that I
Mhm.
mentioned a while ago. But other people too. I think with my Jungian background in psychology, I mean, we are not alone in the house
Oh, no.
by any means, and there's so much more to us, just even as us here.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, Not to mention beyond in the other dimensions that we can explore or be explored by, uh, so that we don't know who we are in any kind of completeness.
Oh, gosh, no.
No.
Gosh,
Mm-mm.
no.
No.
I just noticed our time is up. You want to give out where they can find you?
Yeah. You can find me on my website, which I have a guy that tends, which is douglasgilletteCreations.com. But more directly, you could email me at GILLETTED at sbcglobal.com. But if you email me, be sure that you write, what it's about, because I delete everything else.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And the name of this book is
Soul Making.
Soul Making, the Realization of the Mystical Life. And it is definitely a book that will make you think and will make you stretch yourself a little bit more. Remember the creativity, that's a real key. And Doug, don't go anyplace, but I'm going to play our exit.
Okay.